Right, I then take that silence as a form of approval. So let's dive in. So let me give a quick recap before the lecture formally starts. Here I am on the Moodle site. So what I'm going to do is, remember, the starting point is always your study guide. So as you indicated last week in the study guide, we are busy now moving from the previous online quiz, which you had to complete, now to stress management plan. And just to refresh your memory, there you can click on the study guide and you can check when the various themes, which I'll do a few moments later. But for the moment, I'm just indicating where you can click and see sort of in the study guide, it gives you a very concise structure of what you need to do with a set of instructions. And please remember, very specific about how the file needs to be saved, which is not new. Most of you've done it in the past. And then it also shows you the marking rubric. So what is very nice for you, have all the information. You can also access the rubric to see how the marks will be allocated. If you go on, if I scroll down, you'll see under assignment and quiz submissions, there's the stress management plan. So also there, if you click on that, you will notice that there are also a rubric to show you how it will be marked. So this is also very much straightforward. So please remember the references, because that is 2 marks. And then remember, just sort of, to include the various components of what is required of you and explain it. That is very, very important. And then if you scroll down to topic 7, learning material, on just first textbook chapters on topic 6, you'll notice there are the stress management chapter. And remember, as indicated in the study guide, pages 131 to 133, you need to consult to be able to complete the assignment. And I think it's very timely, because now that we've moving towards half of the second semester, and with the end of module assessments within 2 months, possible exams that you need to write, then sort of, I would say, the demand on your time and how much you need to invest in your studies and prioritize towards focusing on your studies are significantly increasing at this moment. So if you scroll further down on the surveys and forms, there's the health and well-being stress test that you can do for yourself. So please do that. Remember, as I said towards the end of last week's lecture, this topic of stress management, as are the other topics that we've discussed in ALM thus far in this first year, it's not just about achieving a mark for an assignment. These are all vital skills that you need to have and that you need to develop. So the purpose for completing each one of these topics that might not be unfamiliar to you, as the student said already in the first semester, it might be that you've covered that during life orientation, but as you must going through your paces, you might also become aware of how important that is, and that these form vital skills for the rest of your life. So why not use the opportunity now, while being at university, while all of these support services from Zanele and Shante are free because you're a registered student. Make use of it as you're building your theoretical basis. Build your skilled base so that you can become more employable. Right, so health and well-being stress test, if that is very high and shows you have not a well-balanced at the moment and that you are highly stressed, please make an effort to go and speak to and contact Shantae Jacobs. Contact details have been uploaded. If you look below topic 7, learning material, you'll see there's Shantae Jacobs, campus counselor, campus presentation. So that's a presentation. So check that out, please. And if you know that that is also impacting on your academic development at the same time, please make contact with Zonele so that she can assist you with that. I know Shantae is from time to time on campus, so in all likelihood you will meet with her in her office in the Mupani building. And then there's the stress management PowerPoint slides only. So for those of you who don't necessarily want to listen again to the recording of last week as well as this one, then you can also just check out the various slides. So there's multiple sources for you to assist you in a way to check your stress levels at the moment. How are you coping with that? And what can you do about it? So if you feel at the moment overwhelmed and you feel a bit sort of, you don't, you feel, but feeling overwhelmed that you don't know what to do about it, then sort of the first action is, as I said, make contact with Shantae so that she can assist you with it. Okay, don't let the problems that provide you with the stress snowball. Okay, and that's the whole purpose of this assignment as well. If you've identified certain stresses in your life, that pages in the chapter book provides you with guidelines or possibilities how to deal with the stress. Okay, but each one of us, based on our personality, manages stress differently. So what is now important is that you need to be able to manage that stress and find possible solutions. So even if you want to make an appointment with Chantal Zonele, then perhaps use that assignment, and when you've made the appointment, email that in advance to them to say, this is what I've done and this is the possibilities that I am trying to use for manage it. Can you assist me in this regard? What's good about that is that you then show that are aware and that you can pinpoint what the stresses are. And thirdly, what is important is you can also then show that you're taking accountability for managing them, but that perhaps at this moment your strategies for managing the stress are not as successful. So those two individuals, based on their professional expertise, can then assist you in dealing with them better. Because as you've now will see when we really dive into the topic of stress management and unpacking what stress management is all about, is to realize from the start two things. The first is that each one of us, what we view as stress might not be viewed by other people as stress. So it's a very subjective interpretation of our environment. That's the first thing. The second thing, important factor to remember, is that if you uh, how we manage that stress is also based on our skill set that we've developed at a given point in time. So if you do not have the necessary skills already developed to cope with that stress, then you will perceive whatever that stress in your life is as very stressful, and that you will feel not empowered to deal with it because you do not have the necessary skill set. But if you take the first step to aware and acknowledge that that's what you perceive, and if you're willing and have the right open attitude to learn and develop that necessary skill set, if that stressor comes again in your life in a different context, perhaps later on once you want to get married, it might come again in a different guise, or in the workplace. Then because you've developed that skill set already years ago at university, now you don't perceive that specific aspect in your life as a stressor, because you have the necessary skills to cope with it. So this is the whole aim of this assignment, to make you aware of it. And what will you do then? If we steal a bit of question from Cope, the reflection, if you are aware of it, what will you now, if you go through the learning experience, what will you do differently the next time you are confronted with the stress? Right. So let me now sort of move towards stop sharing the screen of the Moodle site. And please bear in mind, as you notice, that this assignment is due on the 31st of August. So remember, it opens up before that time, so it must, and you have again a window of opportunity of at least a week to submit it. Some student, I can't remember the person's name, emailed me during last week after the lecture and said, can he put it in diagram form? You can put it in any format you would like. You can write it out in paragraphs. If you want to use a diagram form listing the stresses and sort of coping mechanisms, you're more than welcome to do so. So the person who sent it, thank you very much for that suggestion. Right. So now I'm going to go to the PowerPoint slides. So these slides, as I've just showed you a few moments ago, they are also available on the Moodle site if you want to check them out once the lecture has finished. So outcomes. By the end of this topic, you should be able to understand the different types of stress, understand what causes stress in your life. Remember, in your life, that is why experiencing stress is so unique to each and every individual. Identify the signs and symptoms of stress. So what is important is you cannot be in denial if you are experiencing stress. You need to be aware if your body indicates certain symptoms, and you pick up certain signs that, yes, I am now under stress. Assess your ability to cope with stress. Okay. So that in a way assesses the skills that you have developed to date to be able to cope and manage effectively the stress, because that's the whole purpose of it. Stress will not go away. Stressful events such as exams, any form of assessments, volume of work, managing your time with regards to multiple roles, as you've indicated in the planning and scheduling assignment, that might only increase. And you will again go through similar change process as you've done in the beginning of the year during your, just straight after your first year of first registration, and then have to adapt to the demands of university life, be it hard skills, how to learn Moodle, MSTeams, etc., or just in general sort of moving to a different place, relocating, and now you need to build and maintain new relationships. If all of that process sort of, brought with it a cluster of stresses, then that will not go away, because again, as familiar as this environment has become now for you, you again will leave at some stage this university, and perhaps if you are at the moment on George, and then you will have to relocate for employment purposes. So you will go through the same process again. It will be the cycle repeating itself. So it will be accompanied by similar stresses. Then identify and apply strategies to manage your stress. This is very much why you're doing the chapter in the textbook, why you need to consult 131 to 133 in the textbook chapter, so that you can there are a number of strategies provided for you, and then you can assess them and evaluate them. Some perhaps you have already tried on your own. Has it worked for you? Would you perhaps be willing to try one of the other uh, strategies that's available to you? Then plan your time with the exam timetable that is available to organize self for exams. So why tips for test and exams? So why is this specific stress highlighted, exams and tests? Because at the moment you're still a student, your priorities should be your academic requirements. And most students must probably at this moment, all of you have regard exams generally and tests as a stressful experience and period in your university calendar. So stress management. What comes to mind when you hear the word stress? So there is a questionnaire that you can complete, 25 short questions on page 1 to 4, so that you can do and then check it out for yourself. And remember, there's also, as I indicated, on the Moodle site uploaded for you that stress test, self-assessment test. So remember, if you look at that slide, it's the topic or the heading is stress management. So this really implies that it's not just about stress and becoming aware of stress. It's about the management of stress, because stress, as guys, as I've said a few moments ago, it will not go away. You do not have control over that. You don't have control over whether you uh, may want to write exams or not. You need to go through assessment purposes to be able to graduate. So you don't have a choice in that regard. What you do have a choice in terms of stress is, what is your attitudes toward it? In other words, uh, do you have an attitude of confronting the stress in your life that you perceive? Do you have the open attitude of learning how to develop the skills to manage it better? So at best, since the stressor might not part, even if you have now a form of assessment, being a student, is what we call exams and tests and assignments due, similar to what you had at school. Once you leave university and you go to the world of work and you are employed, you also have forms of assessment. It's called performance appraisals, to look at how you perform during a specific financial year. So your own performance, based on what we call key performance indicators, are there to evaluate your performance, to evaluate how productive and efficient you are. If you are an entrepreneur, it means generally, and you want to become an entrepreneur on your own business, that means you take full accountability and responsibility for your own development. And it means, in a way, that you generally are more or less risk averse, so willing to take more risks. But there's also stressful, because if the money can't come in, you still need to cover the overheads. So how are you going to manage that process? So please bear all of those aspects in mind, that stresses throughout your life will always be there. So the only choice you have And the only way to improve your interaction with the stress and coping with the stress is really to develop skill set that can manage the stress better. Right. So what is stress? Now let's look at a bit of theory and textbook explanation or definition of what is defined as stress. It's a physiological reaction activated when a person perceives a physical or psychological threat. And that's really academic terminology. But what it basically means is physiological. So it's a stress can be physical threat. So that can be you go and walk. If you're on George campus, you take one of the walking trails and early in the morning, and you've heard about the elusive leopards that's in the Outeniqua Mountains, but you never thought sort of they would come close to the campus, and all of a sudden you walk alone, and then about 50 meters from you down the trail, there or footpath, there is one coming out of the bushes and staring at you. That will create a physical stress, because why do you perceive the stress? You don't have necessarily the physical strength to uh, veer off an attack. The same is, as most probably you all know, is about the baboons on campus. And you might feel that, especially if you walk alone, or even if you walk with 2 or 3 friends, you still fear if you see one of the baboon packs on campus. Even if they are minding their own business, the mere presence in close proximity to where you are walking, that might give you a perceived physical threat. Then there might be psychological threats, which is less physical, but which might be that you worry about, and that might be a test. So exam cannot hurt you in the same physical manner than a leopard or a baboon, and yet psychologically you do see it as a threat. So sometimes this can be either or. This can be either or both these symptoms are physical as well as psychological can be present. Stress, the second distinction is stress can be acute, sudden, and intense. So that can be such as the leopard that you saw the one time on the footpath a few meters from you. So all of a sudden you had that adrenaline rush, and you went into a fight or flight mode. And then, but then as soon as it just looked at you and walked into the bushes again, you never saw it, it never came out again or at you, then that was the once-off incident. And since then, you've walked the trail a number of times, and you did not, the two of you did not cross paths again. Chronic, however, is if the stress is over an extended period of time. So the stressor do not go away, and that is when it becomes chronic. Okay. Then you have, and this is what is important here, is that you get good or positive aspect of stress. This motivates you into action. So eustress, or eustress is where there's a positive aspect of stress. So when we physically in our body pick up changes that shows us stress, it's also way the body assists you in coming into action. So all of a sudden you go into action and you start sitting next to your study and start studying. That is the positive side of eustress. of stress, and that's what it's called, eustress. Then distress is the negative or the downside of stress. This impairs our functioning. So this can be when we when we come aware of the stress. Perhaps in the beginning of the semester, you did not take time out during that week and you planned and scheduled your timetable for the second semester. So you've lost track of your responsibilities, and now sort of this aspect of stress, and this impairs our functioning. So task, and this can then sort of be experienced as negative because the stressor do not go away, and all of a sudden you feel you're lagging behind in terms of revision. You have not planned how to scaffold your preparation for assignments that's due, and all of a sudden you feel overload of tasks, as well as this impairs your concentration. So this can be the downside. But can you see, it's all about how you manage the stress, how much aware you are of the stress, and how you manage it, whether you will perceive all the bad or negative aspects of stress. So, causes of stress. A trigger arouses the stress response within the body and causes a disturbance, a discomfort that may lead to motivation or causes you to collapse. Okay, so there must be some trigger. The trigger might be seeing the baboon or pack of baboons, or seeing the leopard, or checking your calendar and noting that in 2 or 3 days' time you're writing a test or assignment is due. That immediately triggers the body into a response. And then what the result of that might be is then you're motivated, if you see the sound, etc., to get working, or you might feel that I see I need to submit the assignment on Thursday, I need to submit the assignment on Friday, and next week, Monday, I'm writing 2 tests. And you might feel so overwhelmed that you do not know what to do about it. So stresses are the result of an interaction between internal and external conditions. Your inner thoughts, feelings are in the people, things, and events around you. Each person reacts uniquely to stress. Okay, so what is important here is that stresses are the result of an interaction between internal and external conditions. External is the trigger, as indicated, that you get from your environment. And then you have an internal response. Certain hormones are released in the body. Okay. And then that results into how you experience that trigger, how stressed that trigger makes you feel, and how much do you perceive you can manage that stress. And that is why we say stress is subjective for each and every person, because as I said in the beginning, that can be differ from person to person based on the skill set that you've developed and your attitude towards the stress, whether you are able to manage it. So the next slide, causes of stress. External stresses, so they can be external stresses and they can be internal ones. Okay, the external stresses can be relationships, crisis situations, physical discomforts, and task overload. So these components, most of the time, you do not necessarily have control over. You cannot avoid experiencing it and managing it, and you unfortunately cannot avoid them. You perhaps did not necessarily in all way were the cause of the external stresses to appear or develop. However, sort of since you don't have any choice apart from managing it well, that is regarded as an external stressor. Internal stresses are psychological stresses. So that is how you perceive, perhaps how you perceive a specific module or a specific subject that forms part of your diploma or degree. How difficult do you perceive it to be? How you internally perceive that you are competent to be able to pass that specific module or do well in it. Another internal stressor might be conflicting values or lack of purpose. So it might be that, let's use the example of exams, is that it might be that you don't know if we take external stresses such as relationships, and it might be that you've been in this relationships now already since your final year at school, and you are with the same person at on first year on campus, and that relationship is still going strong, but it might be that your partner now wants to take it to the next level and become more intimate. So bring in sex within that relationship. And this might result in internal conflicting values where you might have the value of sustaining from um, having sex before marriage. That might be your value. And it might be that your partner might have a different view on it. Neither of them are uh, wrong based on how that person has been socialized. So that is different sets of values. And if you have then within that relationship different set of values, then that might be creating a lot of stress for you. It might put stress on the relationship. So how will you manage that, and how will you resolve it? Will you change your own values to meet your partner's set of values, or that you feel it's time that you need to reprioritize your values? Or are you believing that you need to stick to your principles, and principle comes before love or passion? That is the choice that only you can make. It's very subjective from person to person. So can you see it can be conflicting values that can create internally a stressor. Lack of purpose. It might be that you now sort of moving towards half of your studies, and parents and other support structures might ask you, yo, so you're now halfway through your qualification. You might be thinking of where do you want to perhaps do a bit of internship during the recess periods, and where do you want to work? Perhaps you need to start networking regarding it. But it might be that you've lost your motivation or goal or purpose for studying that course. And because you've lost that sort of where this will take you in life, it might be you have lack of purpose, lack of motivation. Self-concept, it might be that you part of self-concept have a number of aspects to it, but it might be that you have low self-esteem. And if you have low self-esteem, it might be that you get stressed when you have to, and if you have low self-esteem, you might doubt your ability to become an effective marketer or entrepreneur. So you don't feel empowered to master or to be able to reach your goals. So that can also create stress for you. State of mind. It might be that something has happened and now you're sort of feeling down, as students would say. your current state of mind, your emotions might also have an impact on what you perceive as stress. Then stress continuum. So this stress can be too high levels of stress. Remember, we talked about chronic stress a few slides ago. So chronic stress can be high levels of stress over a very long period of time. And that might impact on your body over time, especially if it's high levels of stress, if there's high intensity, and if it's continuous. So because we've now, when we unpack the definition of stress, we could see it's psychological as well as physiological. So there's a connection between mind and body. And because your body also gears up and goes into ready mode when experiencing stress, it cannot be in that state physically for long periods of time. It's also harmful to your body to be under continuous stress and chronic stress, which comes with high intensity for long periods of time. So if you ignore it, you are aware of it, but you try to ignore it and think that it will go away by itself, you're not only creating psychological harm to you, you are also creating physiological harm. Then, as you can see, the positive side, eustress, that can be motivation. So if you're experiencing stress and you're open for stress, then that can serve as a source of emotion. Can you see? It's only how you view the stress. So that can serve as a motivation for you to perform. Then bored, short duration, low intensity. So if we're talking about a stress continuum, imagine if you draw a line on a horizontal line on a piece of paper. And on the one end of that piece of paper, you put the stress. On the opposite end of that horizontal line, you put eustress. So the positive and the negative is on either side of that horizontal line, which we call the continuum. And then in the middle, it's bored, which is short duration, low intensity. So that might be somewhere during the semester, perhaps in the beginning of a semester, that first week or 2 weeks is not really stressed because you are not yet to have to submit assignments. Think back to the first semester. Was challenging first 2 weeks, but then for that middle 2 weeks before assignments and assessment started, it might have been leveled out. So that might be a period which are not really challenging and not full of stresses. That is the board aspect of it. So how does stress affect you? Identify and share one symptom in each aspect. How does stress affect you? So physically, how do you pick up from your body signs that you are under stress? Remember, your body has signs because there's a connection between mind and body when stresses arise. So what is it? Sweaty palms? Do you get a stiff neck? Do you get headaches? What is that? How do you know when you with regards to your thinking capacity that you are under stress? Are you losing concentration? Are you easily distracted? What signs are there? Your behavior. Do you all of a sudden drink a lot of coffee? Do you have, if you're under stress, do you want to sleep the whole time? Do you have difficulty going into action? Are your study disorganized? What is your behavior when you're under stress? Feelings. Do you feel anxious? Are you worried? Are you feeling depressed? Are you somber in your mood? What feelings do you experience? So when you reflect on stress, each person has a unique set of combination of those four components. So what is important is do a reflection. There are two assessments that you can do, one in a textbook and one uploaded on the Moodle site. But also reflect for a moment on how do you experience stress. What is your unique combination of those four components? Remember, the main aim of the assignment is not only to give you a mark for this topic, but that you hopefully can create an awareness of stress and how you experience it, what are the stresses that you at the moment are experiencing, and if you regard them as high levels of stress, what skills are you then missing out or that you don't yet have to cope with them so that you can manage the stress, that specific types of stresses well in the future. Right. So, signs and symptoms of stress. So, I don't want you to go to these two slides before you first reflected on your own what your unique experiences. You need to have an awareness of how you experience it and what are the signs for each one of those four categories. So that once you have an awareness, only then would you be able to identify what skills you need that is lacking in you managing or coping with that effectively. So I'm not going to, these are examples of each one of them, but I don't want to stay too long on these slides. So first do this, and then after the lecture, you can consult with them and see, are there something similar, or are there perhaps one or two of those bullet points that, yes, I forgot about that, but actually this is how I experience it, right? Now, if you can remember in the beginning of the year in chapter 1, and you can check that out again, we had that wellness wheel, and I did again refer to it towards the end of the first semester's lectures. So being able to cope with the stress versus a balanced lifestyle. So each one of those aspects is possible ways of coping with um, uh, trying to cope with stress. So on the left corner, that's numbered from 1 to 25. That would say ineffective ways of or indications of stress, where you drink more to release the tension. Okay, but that's a short-term approach to it, because just think about the long-term problems that might increase, hangover, etc. You spend a lot of money, so you're running out of pocket money, so it might create, because it's less effective ways of dealing with stress in your life, it might mean that it also creates more stresses for you. So there are the number of them. And you can perhaps be honest with yourself. I want you to check that and see if any of these less effective ways are ones that you have used to date. And just think for a moment, why are they less effective? Okay. What have they, what have they resulted or what was the result when you use them to address a specific stress. Okay. Then a balanced lifestyle, enjoy listening music, making time for family and friends, able to say no, often have fun and laughter. So these components are more effective ways of dealing with stresses. That's numbered A to V. So check them out, and in your assignment, first acknowledge what you're doing that's less effective, and then look at the ones in the right hand box and look at sort of, perhaps would one of them be an option for you to take as a management tool of stress. So 6 R's for stress management. Responsibility, you are in control, establish priorities, and be able to say no. Why is saying no so important? You need to be able to put yourself first. Set your boundaries so that your needs are prioritized and so that you can meet your own needs. Reflection, know your stress, be aware of stress, check your balance in life. Relationships, maintain supportive relations, manage your relations, improve. So there's refueling, relaxation, and recreation. So again, these are positive ways that you can implement in your life that might result in managing the stress better, or that it might mean that it is also about you not creating stress for yourself. Okay, so let's take the example of saying no. It might mean that if you take responsibility for meeting your own needs and meeting your own goals, then it might impact if you have the necessarily high self-esteem and you have self-worth and you're not trying to please anyone by rather putting their needs first and or before yours, then you will perhaps not create problems for you, such as um, you put your needs of your friends before yours. So uh, they perhaps want to, 2 assignments are due Monday, but they said no, they want to go away for the weekend. Now you don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to lose their friendship. And then you would rather say yes going, but the stress is just increasing because you will never have time, even if you take your laptop or your tablet with you, and even if there's connectivity to where you are, there will never be really a time for you to just focus on completing the assignment. So by the fact that you don't set boundaries and say no, and you would rather like to please them, and you value your friendship above your own needs, then you sacrifice your own development as a student. You run the risk of not passing that assignment, not getting admission to the exams, or if it's continuous assessment, it means that you really need before the next assessment to achieve 90%, which is nearly impossible to be able to pass the module at the end of the year. It has a financial repercussion for your parents or if your NSFAS for doing it over again next year, in addition to the workload that you have to do also for your 3rd academic year. So can you see, if you don't, if you have low self-esteem, you put other people's needs in front of you, that's psychological. And that has a ripple effect on your own stress. So the management of stress is very important. And I hope on the slide, when you view those components indicated in blue and red, that you have, in a way, a choice how you manage stress. And if you do not, if you poorly manage stress, that then increases or creates more stresses in your life, which you can do without. So please be aware of this, and see how you can simplify your life and make your life less stressful, so that you really have only those stress that you only have those stress that you don't have control over, that you have to manage, but that you don't create more stress for yourself, such as on the screen, taking, perhaps when it comes to refueling, taking poisons such as nicotine or other forms of chemicals that can lead to addiction and create more stress in your life. You have a choice regarding that. That is why it's so important to develop the necessary coping mechanisms in your life, and to view on how you're managing your life and getting that balance right, that you do not invite more unnecessary, more stresses in your life. So, to manage your stress is to know yourself and determine your stress levels. So that's positive thinking. And can you see the nutrition and correct supplementation and exercise? That shows you the balance between the psychological, which is positive thinking, and the physiological, which is the physical component. You need to manage, when it comes to stress, your psychological aspect of your development, with the wholesome nutrition. So you also need to take care of your body. You cannot just focus on the psychological component and neglect the physical aspect of it, because in the beginning of this lecture we showed you the connection between mind and body when it comes to stress. And if you are experiencing what you perceive as a stressor, that have an impact on physical signs in your body. As we said, sweaty palms, you might get nauseous, you might get headaches, as well as the psychological aspect of it. So you need to be able to manage and create a balance between both sets of aspects in your life. And please keep that in mind. So it's no use that you're focusing on a positive attitude in life, you have high self-esteem, but now you do not have wholesome nutrition, you don't focus on exercise or correct supplementation. And then sort of look at the fourth bullet point. Remember, in the beginning of the semester, I gave you the first lesson, a structure of the semester going forward. And your only homework for the first week was to revisit the planning and scheduling assignment, and then to um, really focus on um, to really focus on sorry to really focus on the psychological component of that. So managing your stress are important in all those aspects. So what you need to do for yourself, I'm going to repeat it, and I've now done it at least twice during this lecture. Take stock of what you experience at this moment as stresses in your life. Don't compare it to your roommate or friends or peers in your class. What do you perceive as stresses? Remembering that each person perceives stress subjectively in a unique way. Okay? So list them. And then you think for yourself, right, how do these stresses, each one of them, manifest in my life? How do I know from my body's reaction that I'm under stress? What's the impact on me psychologically? Write it down. Once you've done that, then you look at, right, am I fine with the status quo or with the circumstances of experiencing stress, or do I want to do something about it? Do I want to develop the necessary skills so that I can cope with that better? That's a decision you can only make for yourself. No one can make it for you. So once you've made that decision, you want to do something about it, but you realize that you um, don't necessarily can do it on your own, then please contact Jonele, contact Shantae so that they can assist you. Right. Manage your emotions. This you can read in the textbook. I'm not going to wait too long for that. So that image is image was created by a Japanese neurologist. If the image is still, you are calm. If the image moves a bit stressed, and if it moves like a carousel, you are very stressed. Tell me how you're doing. So for the moment, this is not moving at all for me, so I assume I'm very calm. So you can look at this and see sort of if it moves like a carousel for you. Right. That ends the content of stress management. This is really, in a way, just revisiting the Moodle assignment. So there are the page numbers, there's the rubric. This has been cut and pasted on the slide from the study guide. So if you compare the study guide to this slide, it provides you with the same information. Then here are a template that you can use for organize for tests and exams. It's always first step if you experience exam and tests as a challenge that you can then the first step is really just to write it down. If you start organizing it, you'll notice that the stress levels decrease. Then there's a bit of exam tips. I know it's still early days perhaps for you, but you can use these tips for online quiz, etc., or tests that you have to do. So check them out. I will revisit them closer to the exam period at the end of the semester, but for the moment, please just take note of this. So there are 2 slides on that, and there's a slide on what you need to do on the day, during the day, and there's a bit of tips for problem solving questions. And there's tips for multiple choice questions that you can check out. You've just done an online quiz about it. And then very important, you know, here is a slide of what you need to do after the exams. Okay. Exam preparation is not just for doing it prior to the exam, it's also once you've completed it, there's still a bit of work to do if you really want to learn from the experience. And then reduce test and exam anxiety. There's a few aspects that's really a synopsis of aspects that we've covered in this in this lesson. So I will sort of revisit this, as I said, these final set of slides about exam stress closer to, or make you aware of it closer to the end of the semester. For the time being, I assume when you did your planning and scheduling component in the first week of the semester, that you have some form of grid similar to this, where you know exactly when the tests, exams are, whether it's online, in person, as well as you can add to that assignments. I assume you already have. If you don't, remember it's never too late, especially if you feel at this moment you are uh, overworked. You don't know when assignment for which module are supposed to be submitted. So don't think it's too late. You can still do something about it. The most important thing is send the emails and seek support. Do not self-isolate yourself or feel completely numb and feel that you are unable to do something about it. That's not the case. It's never too late. Right. So now we have 4 minutes left in this lecture about stress management. I will now ask you, do you have something to ask me? Is everything clear about the discussion? Anything unclear about the assignment? Remember the 31st of August, as indicated on that assignment, that's when it's due, this assignment. So you have to complete it then. You have to submit it then. It seems no one has any questions or comments. I'm not seeing any hand being raised, as well as nothing on the chat forum. So I'm quickly going to then recap what I said in the beginning. Remember, I'll be tomorrow afternoon between 1 and 2 in room 301-0046. And you're more than welcome to join me there or to say hi. Unfortunately, I have a leadership class starting at 2. They prefer it because they're fourth-year students, and then they can leave earlier in the afternoon. So unfortunately, it's not this law, and then the last 25 minutes you can then have something to eat if you want to leave the venue. Okay, so I hope I see one or two of you. It would be nice to just put a face to the pictures on my screen. I wish you all the best for the remainder of the week. Please, I always say it, and I know I perhaps reiterated too much, but there are the support mechanisms. Make use of it, as most or some of you have done, and it seems to me it yielded positive results. So it's always good. Remember, we all want you to be a success at university. So if you feel down, despondent, or you just need a bit of career advice, please come and please talk to us so that we can assist you. Right. So have a fabulous rest of the week. All the best for the weekend. And then we have the lecture next week at the same time. You keep well and take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.